Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Silent Bob from all those Jay and Silent Bob type pictures, man. And I'm breaking the silence to tell you that you're listening to the Buff and the Blazer podcast with Drew and Toddo. Enjoy the show, kids.
Hey, Toddo.
What's going on?
We got a podcast, The Buff and the Blazer. If I was a listener, where would I go to find more?
You can check us out on our website, thebuffandtheblazer.com. Drew over there writes a article that goes along with every single episode.
You can find all kinds of little extras on the articles, and you can listen to the podcast right there. Also, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, we're on Twitter at Buff and Blazer. Follow us there.
Get those clicks, people.
The Buff and the Blazer.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Buff and the Blazer podcast, the show where we break down, discuss movies, old movies, new movies, everything in between. I'm Drew, and as always, I'm here with my good buddy, Mr. El Toddo.
What's up, man?
What's up, dude?
How's it going?
You know, it's warming up a little bit so we can go outside and enjoy the sunshine.
Weed season, man. The weeds are coming.
Yeah, along with the bugs, too.
Mm-hmm.
Got to keep the bugs away. But yeah, so we got, we're continuing our little Oscar preview, I think, this week with some of the Best Picture nominees. And on this episode, we're going to be discussing Minari, directed by Lee Isaac Chung. And this is one you and I both paid for because it's not streaming yet.
$20.
$20. So let's just jump right in, man. What did you think of Lee Isaac Chung's Minari?
So, it's a good movie. It's really well made. It's really well acted. It was really boring. It was really kind of a slog to get through. It never really went anywhere. And I totally get, like, the story it's trying to tell. Like, what would it be? Like, the darker side of the American dream, where things don't go exactly as, you know, they're advertised. Move to the land of opportunity and, you know, put your hard work in and you'll get ahead kind of bullshit American mythology that we've been fed our whole lives. So I appreciate the messaging, and I appreciate the kind of the immigrant standpoint of this movie and how it really highlights the struggles of immigrant families. This is in the 80s, right?
Yeah, this film takes place in the 80s.
Yeah. So I get all of it, and I can acknowledge the artistry of the filmmaking and like the messaging, but it wasn't very fun to watch. Nothing really ever happened climax-wise. The story was really just kind of straight flat line, you know, not much up and down.
Yeah.
And it was hard to watch, hard to get through the whole thing.
Yeah,
I kept hoping there would be like some A24 madness where there's like a, you know, a serial killer loose on their property or something like that. But it never got there. What about you, man?
You know, you and I have a lot of the same tastes with certain things, and I echo a lot of what you said. So it is an A24 film, and the interesting thing too is I don't know if you saw this anywhere, but it is a semi-autobiographical film.
Okay.
So it's based off of sort of Lee Isaac Chung's history, I guess, as an immigrant, part of an immigrant family in the 80s. So he did the film is he identifies, I guess, a little bit with the character of David.
All right, that's what I was going to ask. So he's the young
he's the young boy. But even so, like, he distanced the story a little bit from himself. Not every character is, like, exactly how his family was made up or whatnot. But besides that, so anyway, it's an A24 film. It's getting massive hype. I think it has, like, a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes with, like, 200-plus reviews. So my expectations were pretty high. And I'm torn a bit because, like you, the story, I really appreciate the story they're telling. And I appreciate how intimate the story is in this film, how you really get to dive into the family dynamics and really get to know each character and understand what they're kind of about and their motivations and stuff like that. It's well shot. It's beautifully crafted. It's well directed. But like you, it was a bit of a slog to try and get through. It was a little slow for me. Not the most enjoyable film, while there were some nice light moments.
Couple, yeah.
And I think, for me anyway, David was like my favorite character in the whole film.
All the way.
So he really he kept me sort of engaged to a degree because I just enjoyed his character so much. But yeah, it was a little hard for me to get through too, just because like when I compare this film to Nomadland had some like visual things, this like documentary feel where you're able to travel and see things and stuff, and it gets a little bit interesting with that story. So I was engaged with something like that, but with this, it's very much like a very real world story. It involves this family and their particular circumstances. So yeah, at times I found it hard to stay engaged just because I was a little bored. But it does heat up at the end a little bit, literally. Yeah, I'm here all night. But yeah, I do appreciate this story, though. I like this style of filmmaking where we can spend time with characters, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of something exciting, like plot.
The A24-ness?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the A24 films that we've done have been pretty... There's something that twists in the film that makes
thrillers,
it like, completely nuts.
More thrilling.
Yeah, but they do have those very like sort of mundane storylines, I guess.
Okay, I don't think I've seen those. So let's run it down. What have we done? Hereditary,
Midsummer,
Uncut Gems,
and
anything
like just
else?
I can't remember off the top of my head. But like, let's just take those three for example, right? Those three are very they have these very sort of key elements to them that make them just off the wall stories, sort of in their own way. This one I feel is a lot more grounded and it's a lot more real world, even though those films there's real world elements into them. It was so real world to me that there were times where it was really hard to get through. And I don't know if I would have how much rewatch value this film has for me personally.
I'm not watching it again.
But like I said, as someone that appreciates filmmaking and the process, I thought, I mean, it doesn't get much better than how well this film was made. So I really appreciate that.
I was thinking the grandma was going to be like the horror element of the story. For some reason, I thought there was like a horror element the whole time, and it like never showed up.
Oh, shit. So yeah, let's dive into a little bit of the story. We won't go too heavy because I think it's still pretty much a new release and it's not streaming anywhere. So I don't know. You think we can navigate this without too many spoilers?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much happens in the movie from a spoiler standpoint. So, but yeah, we won't give everything away, I guess.
Okay, so let's start off with this first. I'm going to ask like a more general question, I guess. In terms of the overall story and plot line, what did you enjoy most about this story? Or if that's too broad of a question, like what element stuck out to you as a strength before we start kind of talking about things we didn't connect with as much?
I guess it's a recurring theme on here, but kind of like the rural juxtaposed with the city life.
Yeah.
And the struggle that causes, particularly between the husband and wife in this story.
Yeah.
I had to, poke out my favorite element of the plot. It would be that kind of push-pull. The wife wants to go to the city and the husband wants to make his way out on the land. Kind of that very honorable kind of success story.
Yeah.
I guess. What about you?
For me, I really liked how well these characters were fleshed out. So we spend so much time with them individually together. And I think, was the movie under 2 hours or was it right at 2 hours?
It was like right around 2.
So regardless, though, some films can't even develop characters in 3 hours. So I thought Lee Isaac Chung did a great job of making sure that we knew about the nuts and bolts of what made some of these characters tick. Like, so you mentioned, and I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it's kind of one and the same since the story is about the family and the characters. But like, you get the idea of Jacob and how he's really gung-ho about, like, he wants to build something for his family. He's very tied to this American ideal, like the American dream, and wants to build something for his family so that they can be, you know, essentially self-sustained. And they end up moving from California, right, to Arkansas.
Yeah.
I guess that's in the
For
story.
a big chunk of land.
Yeah. And then, like, on the flip side of things, Monica, played by Yeri Han, she's, like, more of the realist. She's more concerned with how feasible is this? Like, this seems ridiculous. We just uprooted from California so you could build a farm in Arkansas, and we're living in this, like, trailer home. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff is really speaks to a lot of people, I think, on a basic human level. Like, so we're able to kind of see things in each of these characters that we can connect with. And so for me anyway, I thought the director did a really good job of conveying sort of their motivations, but also keeping it grounded enough to where a wide variety of people will be able to connect with any of these characters. And I think that's the strength of any good movie, really.
I kind of like the interesting dynamic of the wife having the more conservative outlook on things. Like, we got jobs, let's just freaking work our jobs and make do.
Yeah.
In a place where we have, you know, a social life and stuff.
Right.
And while Jacob has the much more, like, ambitious,
Yes.
want to get out there, and he's not content with just sexing
Sexing chicks.
chickens or chicks. And he wants to, you know, make it big.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably my favorite part of the story.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the other good thing I really appreciated is we get to kind of see things from the perspective of the kids too at points.
Yeah.
And I think some of the best parts of the film are David's relationship to his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole sort of relationship they have, those were the most enjoyable parts of the film for me and the story. And I loved just how mischievous David could be. Like, he's playful though. He's like a playful character, and he's he's like a bit of a jokester. And some of my favorite scenes he was in.
As the kid, like, the whole movie, you're trying to figure out if he's, like, totally tormented and sad, or if he's just, like, a little boy wanting to have fun and play pranks and stuff.
Yeah, or he's just bored.
Yeah, I don't know. I like how they really highlight how difficult it is for the family to kind of integrate with the little country ass town that they live in, and kind of the challenges with that. And, like, you know what I found kind of interesting is how they had the more, I guess you would say, racist kind of elements of the movie all play out through the little kids.
Yeah.
There was never, like, you know, Jacob being stopped by a pickup truck of good old boys and have, you know, them yelling a bunch of racial slurs at him. It was always played out between the kids and very innocent. Like,
that's a lot more effective too.
Yeah,
because,
it was interesting.
It doesn't matter who you are. That's going to happen at that age because kids don't have filters.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I thought was another really effective thing about how Chung decided to tell this story.
Yeah, it's not very in your face with the cultural change or the differences.
Right.
It's very subtle, right? And it doesn't go the other way too, where, like, the parents could be really forcing their kids to try and be American and, like, maybe not be speaking Korean in the house or not eating Korean foods and stuff like that. It didn't go that way either, so that was pretty well executed, I think.
Yeah, and I thought that was well navigated too, because there is a bit of an element there too where it does kind of raise this question of, you know, your Korean background versus this new American identity, and what takes precedent if there is one over the other, and how do they deal with that. You definitely see, like, with Jacob, he seems to be more into, like, adopting some of that American way of thinking, and he even has these lines,
but not the religion side.
Not the religion side. But, like, he has that line, something about where he's like, you can't trust, like, a Korean in the city or something like that, when he's talking about he's trying to sell his produce to one of the distributor, or one of the stores in the city. And then Monica seems to be a lot more at home, I think, with her background and tradition. And, like, not that Jacob isn't, but he seems to be more open to the idea of adopting more of this like American way of doing things, it seemed to me.
And you can tell he's struggling with that, because in the beginning when he's like pointing out to his son where they're going to find water and using their brains.
Yeah.
And he's like, these stupid Americans believe all this nonsense
Yeah.
with a freaking magic stick and shit. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, so I really like that. And like you said, they don't go one way or the other. It's just kind of, it's there, and it's a question. But yeah, and what's up with that? So I've never heard of that. When you go
The
around
stick trick?
with a stick trying to find water?
I've never heard of it in terms of like finding a well location, but I have seen underground utilities dudes, like dudes that work in water and sewer,
Yeah.
do this like they put 2 metal rods in their hand that like swing freely, and then they walk around, and supposedly when the rods cross each other,
Yeah.
they're walking over a water line. So that's how they know where to pothole and dig. I was on an infrastructure job
Really?
once. Yeah, where they were redoing this entire community, all the sewer and water.
Yeah.
And they were like decommissioning all the old septic tanks. And all the underground utilities guys were all the workers, right?
Yeah.
The ones that were tasked with going to find the potholing, finding all the utilities that they're going to dig up and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of them did this, and they actually, I forget what they called them, but they like had tools for this. And it was like a little, like inch diameter pipe with another really small, like 1/4 inch diameter steel pipe with a 90-degree angle on it that goes into the handle. And they would walk around, and when the 2 pipes would cross, the 2 little bars would cross each other, they would start digging right there. Like they did it all the time.
That is nuts.
And I was paying attention, and it was like hit or miss. Like it worked sometimes, and sometimes it didn't.
That's crazy. I just thought it
Yeah.
was some crazy superstitious thing.
But this thing that they're doing on the movie is different than what I was talking about.
Yeah, because in the movie they essentially have like a wishbone shaped looking stick.
Yeah,
that they walk
that ends
around
up
with.
pointing vertically at the ground. The stuff I'm talking about is dudes, the poles crossing horizontally. It's different.
Weird. Yeah.
What they call them, like widget sticks or something like that?
Did they say in the
I don't
movie?
know.
I can't remember.
No, I'm talking about the all the utility guys. I think it was like widget sticks or something.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, side note. So yeah, like I said, the story, I loved how intimate and personal the story is, how it was portrayed. Let's talk a little bit about where the story leads and where it ultimately lands. So you have like Jacob, who has these goals and sort of this, he wants this to pay off, his American dream, and he has all this. And then it ends at a point where the feasibility of all that, it doesn't really turn out the way he expects and how anyone expects.
But it's not all sad, right?
No.
Because they still got their chick sexing jobs.
Yeah.
They're basically right where they started.
Right. So in terms of how the story starts and where it ends, is that because you mentioned earlier that it doesn't really go anywhere to you, in your opinion?
Yeah.
So is
It's
that
just about the struggle.
for you? It's kind of a circular thing going on.
Yeah, and like with the messaging of the movie, I get why it's circular.
Okay.
Right? There's so many rags to riches stories in America, but for every one of those, there's 50 of these.
Yeah.
So that's the point they're trying to make.
Right.
So that's why I get where like I said at the beginning, I totally understand everything, and I get why people are hailing it as so good.
Yeah.
It just wasn't very entertaining.
Yeah. That's the best way to say it, I think. And like you said, I would also agree that the story is with the family itself, because there is sort of this arc that the family goes on, and at one point things seem pretty dire for them. And I think once you get towards the end of the film, there's a little bit of a resolution there. And like you said, it's not all sad, and it's not entirely like it skirts this nice medium of being like right in the middle. It's not too depressing in one way, and it's not too like gleaming happy on the other side of things. So
Yeah, and it plays a lot on risk reward. So
Yeah.
like the perceived risk that Jacob is taking with their money and all this hard work. What I think Monica represents is her vision of like the reward for the risks you taking aren't worth it.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself, it causes this conflict between them, which trickles down to cause stress on the entire family.
Right.
So it was very clever in that respect, and how it's all weaved together with the central kind of argument of going for it or just taking the safe route.
Yeah.
But like I said before, the risk of everything Jacob's doing, if it would have worked, I think it would have been the right move.
Yeah.
Don't you?
I think so too. And I think there's a point there where he was on the cusp of it taking off. And
But
other
I can't help but think, like, the margins, the profit margins,
yeah.
like, did he never take into that account? Because, like, with agriculture, I mean, produce is so cheap. You go to the store, like, produce is so cheap to buy. And I think it was in the 80s. I don't think a banana was $17 in the 80s, right? But,
Pretty
like,
sure.
farming strikes me as one of those really bad elements of the American dream. Like, one of those things that was sold to people as a way to make a living that isn't profitable until you're at, like, ridiculous amounts of units.
Yeah.
Like giant fields of corn, you know?
Yeah.
And whether it's the immigrant story like this, or it's the, you know, like the promotion of getting people to move west under the Homesteader Act and stuff, and really lying about how much water is there and how much profit people can make off farming.
Yeah.
You know, because that was like a really big shitty thing that America did. So, I don't know. There's a lot of like cool subtext to this movie that probably a lot of people wouldn't even understand.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too that's kind of refreshing about the story, is that they don't hit you over the head with it.
No.
It's there because it's there. It's always there, especially with this, you know, with being an immigrant family. But I like how it's naturally part of this story because it has to be.
Yeah.
So I thought he navigated it as well as you could probably do without trying to have a massive agenda or anything. He, like, to me, it just seemed like this was a story he wanted to tell.
I'm noticing a theme in all the movies this year that are nominated for Best Picture. And like all of them kind of highlight the shitty behavior of the American either mythology or the government or the law enforcement, right? With like Nomadland, Judas and the Black Messiah, this movie. This one is pure on the mythology, right?
Yeah.
It purely attacks the American dream myth.
Yeah. Like, when pieced together, there's definitely a narrative there.
So take note. Make a movie that talks shit about America in a really clever way, and you'll get an Oscar nod.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see the story about Superman renouncing his U.S. citizenship.
Yeah. Isn't there like a full-blown alternate universe of where Superman grew up in Russia?
Yes.
Isn't there like a whole series of comics?
It's a one-shot. It's a graphic novel, but yeah, it's called Red Sun.
Okay.
And he, instead of crashing in rural America, he crashes in Russia during the Cold War.
Nice.
So he has like this whole red suit with the, you know, all the baggage of that story. So it's.
I was on a job once and this dude showed up. I'd never worked with him before, and he had like a Superman with the hammer and sickle.
Yep.
In
That's
there.
on his chest.
Yeah, and he was wearing that T-shirt at the first day, and I was like, "You're real into communism, huh?" And he was like, "No, this is like a Superman thing," and I was like, "Oh,
You're real into communism.
yeah." I was like, "You're fucking putting
He's
it
like-
out there that you're a commie, huh?"
Yeah, commie represent.
It was pretty funny.
Oh, man. Yeah, we digress. So, yeah, let's jump into a bit of the characters here now, even though we kind of touched upon them a little bit already. I got to start with David, man, because David was, like, I think the best part of this film for me. I just love how that actor, Alan S. Kim, I don't even know how old this kid is, but he played that role so well. And he's like, I just love how free-spirited he is. He comes across, how playful he is. And one of my favorite moments in the film is when he pees in Grandma's soup bowl, and
Tricks her.
yeah,
She asked for Mountain Dew.
she asks for Mountain Dew, mountain water, as they call it in the movie, and she takes a little sip of his pee, and he like runs out of the house knowing what he did, and she's like, "You little bastard, get back over here."
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Probably one of my favorite moments in the film. But yeah, what did you think of the character of David? And apparently this is like Lee Isaac Chung, sort of a distant view of like him from the 80s.
Yeah, it really illustrates the kind of American versus Korean kind of dynamic in this movie. And the kid's 7 years old, so he's a hell of an actor.
Yeah.
At 7. It highlighted the most because there's like that points when he's like, "Oh, grandma smells like Korean food," or
yeah,
"You're not a normal grandma. Normal grandmas bake cookies and they don't swear." And
yeah, they don't watch
and then
wrestling.
he's like, trying to make friends at the little church gatherings and stuff. So
yeah,
it's very relatable. Like even for kids that just like moved around, maybe without, I can't relate to the racial aspect of it, but I moved around a bunch as a little kid. So even the kind of fitting in with new people and new surrounding stuff, I thought was really kind of a cool element to the movie. He was my favorite for sure.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's pretty accurate, at least from my perspective, is there's this generational thing too. So it's like taking so my family, for example, so my family's from Guam, and my parents, neither of them speak Chamorro, which is like the native language, but both sides of their parents spoke it fluently. But growing up as kids, they were sort of, Guam's like an American territory. They were almost like, told, they were told not to speak Chamorro because they wanted, to instill that sort of English American, thing into my parents. So that's why they don't speak the language. It was discouraged at the time.
Yeah.
And then as a result, I know nothing. So it's, it kind of trickles down, but it becomes this sort of generational thing. But what's interesting is you get that a little bit with the kids here because they do speak English fluently. But like you mentioned earlier, they're still speaking Korean in the house.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. But I know when you talk to a lot of like second, third generation immigrant families or, families like with similar backgrounds, a lot of times you'll hear that, they were encouraged not to speak English.
Yeah.
Not to speak their native language and encouraged to fully adopt English. But it seems like that's kind of changing now. There seems to be a bit more of like a resurgence of native identity and really sort of, carrying that banner, which is kind of inspiring at times.
So let me ask you a question, since this is really a cool topic and you have kind of direct relatability to this story. Did your family let go of the food traditions?
No.
Or just the language?
Just the language. So like,
because those are kind of like the two main points, right?
Yeah. So my mom, she'll cook a lot of like traditional foods, and like to this day, they like certain, American foods. Like I love a hamburger just like anyone else. I love pizza. It's my favorite. But my parents, who, the previous generation, like my dad, for example, if he has hamburgers more than like 1 or 2 days in a row, or like, anything else not from Guam, like he'll go nuts.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he'll go nuts. It's like he needs to have something there, something familiar at least from like his background.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I can totally identify with some things here.
That's really cool.
And I thought he did a really good job of that.
Well, I did grow out your Guambuni peppers from Guam that
Yeah.
you gave me. And holy shit, they are hot. Holy shit, they are hot.
Yeah, definitely not the best peppers to just bite into.
Dude, I ate a whole one and like almost had a heart attack. Almost fainted.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, they're little firecrackers, those things. But yeah, let's let's go down to the list here a little bit. What did you think of let's get the kids out of the way though. What did you think about Anne? Noel Cho?
I thought she really mirrored her mother's mentality
Totally.
of kind of just like straight business, do what you have to do, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And I thought she was really good too, because she kind of was not as front and center as David was,
Right.
but you could tell she was going through all the same type of things too.
Yeah.
And she's like has that older kid vibe to where she's like slightly more responsible,
Yeah.
you know, kind of taking care of her little brother, even though she's probably like, what, 10
Yeah.
or so, age-wise. I thought she did a really good job.
Yeah, I loved her. She's again, like, she gets the level-headed thing from her mom. And at one point, she's even, like, sitting down with her mom, and she's like, are you all right? Even checking in on her mom and her dad, because she, like, to me, as someone that young in the story, she has a really clear, like, ability, from what I was watching, like, to kind of gauge the temperature of things that are going on. And, yeah, I thought she did a great job. And then we got to talk about grandmother. And
Yeah.
she's billed as Sunja. But yeah, she's played by Yoo Jung-yoon. And I loved her performance. Like, she was on another level, I think, from everyone else in this film. She was she had this, like, she's probably one of the more lively characters in this movie.
Yeah, constantly talking shit. I was kind of wanting her to be, like, drunk and smoking a cigarette, like, the entire movie, because she kind of had that attitude.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was pretty entertaining, although I was kind of disappointed because I thought her character was going to be like a major conflict pivot point in the movie,
okay.
But she really wasn't.
No, but I do feel like she plays the role of, like, what's interesting is she kind of, her being there with them in the beginning is sort of a topic that kind of puts Jacob and Monica at odds at times. It seemed like. But then towards the end of the film, it's almost like she's sort of this mechanism that brings them together in a weird way. And it kind of brings me back to the title of the film, Minari. And I guess that's where the film ends, right? That scene where...
Yeah, they're picking all the little Minari plants that she planted down by the creek that are thriving and doing great.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely something there where she's like... She is sort of a linchpin in terms of the family dynamic, like where it starts and then where it ends, in my opinion anyway. I don't know if you felt like that at all.
I did expect it to be, like I said, a much more of a conflict point of the movie. Like I do get, but I never got the sense that like Jacob was furious that she was there.
Right.
It was just like another piece of the puzzle for him. It's like, all right, if the mom is here, then maybe they'll let me go on with my wacky ideas.
Yeah.
For a little while. It's like buying him time.
I got that too. Like he's like,
but I was expecting it to be one of those things where it's like, I'm fucking leaving unless your mom leaves, you know? Like one of those types of stories.
So maybe I phrased it wrong. There's maybe a little bit of a tension there, but it never gets to the point of like being a massive like splitting mechanism.
Yeah, and on that same note, I thought it was going to be one for like the horror angle. I thought she was going to start like terrorizing David. Like Butter's grandmother terrorizes him on South Park in that bully episode. But then I kind of realized it wasn't going to go that route. But it really softened. Like after he makes her drink his piss, she kind of like acknowledges how good of a prank it was.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, yeah, you got me, you know. And then they become like really close after that, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, it is. She's kind of like the cool grandma, I guess. She ends up becoming... I like how David really wants her to be like the old granny that makes cookies and doesn't swear and stuff, but I thought her character
So I got the sense that he had meeting her for the first time because he's younger, right? He's supposed to be like, what, 4 or 5?
Yeah, something like that.
You know, just like after toddler age or whatever. And what I want to know is where did he get the ideas of what a regular grandma is supposed to be? Is that like the American thing because she comments on it?
Yeah, you know, and I kind of wondered that myself. And my only answer to that is if he was around watching like American television and stuff, reading books for even like a year or two, especially in kid stories, you know, there's like very much this idea of what a grandma is. Yeah,
I didn't have no grandmas. So I didn't get any of that social dynamic growing up.
Yeah, it's I thought she really gave this film, you know, some life, definitely. And then I think where the story's focused on for the most part is Monica and Jacob, who we touched upon a bit. But I wanted to ask you first about, I think this is this Daryl Cox? No, it's not Daryl Cox. The actor that plays his field hand.
Oh, Will Patton?
Character. Yeah, Will Patton, but his character's name.
Paul.
Paul, that's right. There you go.
Yeah.
Will Patton. What did you think of him?
Creepy. Like, very well-to-do, well-meaning guy, but nothing freaks me out more than, like, wild Christian religious folk.
People walking down the street carrying crosses?
Speaking in tongues, performing the labors and freaking carrying the cross down the street every Sunday. Like, nothing freaks me out more than that sect of people. And blessing everything. And, like, he did a really good job in that role.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, when he first came into the role, into the movie, I was expecting him to be a conflict point, too.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, for him to be doing something nefarious.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't get there either.
Yeah, you were expecting like a Minari thriller, huh?
I was expecting like Midsummer, dude.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, it's A24. The music in the trailer is very like weird and kind of creepy. It
had
and
Midsummer
they're not
vibes.
giving away any of the horror.
Yeah.
Like I totally thought it was a horror movie, man.
Yeah, this is as far away from horror as you could get.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought his performance in that role as Paul, I loved it. And
yeah, it was really, really good performance.
It was interesting. Like, he's this, like you said, this super intense Christian dude. But, like, at the same time, he has this, like, genuine connection with Jacob. And I like their relationship. Anytime they were on screen together, I like their dynamic when they're in the fields and stuff.
And I liked his general positivity about...
Yeah, that's a good way of
about the farm.
Yeah, even when things
because you feel like David or Jacob would have given up way earlier, if not for Paul.
Right. So yeah, he was an interesting character to add into this bunch, and I'm curious to know if that was something from this autobiographical thing too, like if there was a character like that.
And I just love the way Jacob looks at him when he's going through all of his weird little religious moments.
Yeah.
When he's like speaking in tongues and shit. He's just got this look on his face like, you fucking crazy?
Yeah, I love the moment where he's trying to hand Paul a cigarette, and then he's like, oh, no. And then he's like, oh.
Help me, Jesus.
Yeah. Then he's like, you crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times.
And we haven't talked about him directly, but Jacob.
Yeah.
How do you say his last name? Stephen Yeun?
Stephen Yeun, yeah.
He was really good.
Yeah.
I can totally see why he got a nomination.
Yeah, for sure. Was he the only one that got a nomination?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Monica, Yeri Han.
Yeah, Monica. Even
if they both got nods, because they were both really good. And Monica in particular, she's got some pretty heavy emotional scenes. I love how she played that like really strong, trying to be the strong woman and trying to keep it together all the time, but on the verge of just like losing it.
Yeah.
Like when they have their conversation outside the potential produce buyer that they meet with in whatever town that is. I can't remember where they go.
Right.
But when she like cries, that tear comes down her face and she wipes it off really quick.
Yeah.
Like it was a really subtle thing, but I really liked that.
Yeah, and then her face is so expressive too. Like when she first walks into their home and you see the look on her face, you know exactly what she's thinking. She's like,
the disappointment.
What the fuck is this? Yeah, really, really great. I mean, I think I could see anyone from this cast getting a nomination, like an Academy nomination, and it would be totally warranted.
Yeah. The acting is spot on, dude.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
really, really good.
I got to ask you, though, like, that situation that they walked into with a bunch of land,
yeah,
you know, in that trailer house, to me, that seemed like pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You know, like, as someone like me, it's like, who cares about having friends and shit? You got all that land and all that outdoors to have a blast in.
Yeah.
But I guess it's different when you're a wife with kids and shit.
I think it's a bit different if you have like kids, especially. But yeah, interesting after discussing Nomadland for sure. Well, yeah. Any last shout outs you wanted to give or comments on any of these actors?
I mean, we hit pretty much everybody that's mainly in the movie. I think everyone else in there is like, they have like 2 lines
Yeah, for sure.
and they're just in one scene.
So yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think everyone gave a really strong performance. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the artistry of the film, the cinematography, look, everything. I thought this film, in classic A24 fashion, looked beautiful. A24 doesn't make a poorly produced movie.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about this film was how warm the colors were. Like, it's a very warm palette, and I loved any time the camera was placed outside, like on the farm or just grazing the landscape, giving you different views. It was just really, really beautiful cinematography.
Really nice mixture of landscape and then like some shaky cam.
Yeah.
And I really like the opening when they're driving there, when they pull up in the driveway and stuff.
Yeah.
That was like, I thought, a really nice mixture of the shaky cam inside the car on the kids, and then looking out the windshield as she's pulling up and the house is on the wheels and shit.
Yeah.
It was really pretty, and I think it was really clever in the palette, like you talk about, like how warm and how kind of like land of endless opportunity
Yeah.
it's presented as.
I could see why you would think it was a horror movie, though, because you thought they were trying to throw a wrench at you with, like, the way they had Midsummer
Yeah.
and even,
Yeah,
like,
but-
Parasite, I would say.
Yeah.
Parasite, it had all this, like, beautiful imagery. You're thinking you're watching this, like, story about this family, and then it all goes to hell.
But it is interesting in that it is so warm, but it's not a good story.
No.
Even like the little bits that you get in the movie of people kind of knowing the land that Jacob bought and like,
Yeah.
oh, that land's a death trap. The last guy that lived there blew his head off.
Yeah.
So it really kind of, I thought it was, because it never really had like a dark feel, even though the story's generally kind of dark the whole time.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, realistic, I would say.
Yeah.
For someone in this position, it's a very realistic story, I think. But yeah, it could get pretty heavy at times, I think. I had a hard time at certain moments.
Was there anything shot-wise that really stuck out to you? I really liked I don't want to say much, but I really liked the kind of climax of the movie
Yeah.
on what it was, because they obviously did that
Mm-hmm.
to that barn,
Yeah.
and I won't say anymore. But like I really liked that shot.
Yeah. For me, my favorite sequences were especially the one where you have David and his grandma, and they're walking through the land, and then they find the creek where she plants the Minari. But that whole sequence, I loved how it was shot, because it's very much like you get the traditional right to left kind of screen direction, and then the camera like organically moves and follows, and it's almost like you're there just walking behind them.
Yeah.
So I loved the look of that. So those were some of my favorite sequences. And then I loved a lot of the really beautiful close-up shots where you just have them framed and they're like looking off screen. But
Yeah.
there's something powerful about getting into the head of a character by shooting them that way without needing any words.
Mm.
And I talked a little bit about that during Nomadland, and you get that here too. It looked really, really nice.
They make wicked movies from just a visual standpoint.
Yeah. I feel like every one of the directors they have are like these people that went to film school and like know how to fucking shoot, and I don't know. They're not just like, you want to make a movie? Come make one for us. They seem to have to know, definitely like have a vision at least. Yeah, well, let me ask you about that real quick before we move on. As an A24 film, does this live up to that, having that in front of the film, the A24?
Visually, yes.
Okay.
You can tell it's one of their movies. They all have this same kind of like style of filming.
Yeah.
That's a really nice mixture of a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And I love that they shot so much of this obviously on this little plot of land,
Yeah, for sure.
which I liked.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it definitely lives up to the A24 quality.
Storyline completely different than everything else A24 that we've done, or
Were
that
you
I've
under-
seen, I guess.
Were you under the impression that A24 was kind of like a thriller / horror banner?
Yeah, I thought that's all they did, man.
Oh, okay. Okay, no. Not at all.
One of the beauties of having no knowledge of an industry where you're reviewing the work.
Yeah. Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, the whole time I was like, fuck, when's this going to get wacky? You know, when is this going to get weird,
okay.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that could definitely change your experience, I think, a little bit. You're like, I don't see any blood. Well, you do see a little bit of blood. But yeah, no, they're definitely more of a, like, I guess they're more of an indie label, but they're very much into this, like, they produce less films at really high quality. I guess that's what they're all about.
Mm.
And the
Did you
Green
see
Knights.
Brad Pitt was an executive producer on this?
Yeah, I saw that
I
too.
saw his name when the credits rolled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was interesting. I don't know why or what his involvement was, but you can give anyone a producer credit if you're just.
Oh,
like,
yeah?
Yeah, it's nuts. You're just.
He was
oh,
like second on the list when the credits
I think he was
rolled.
the first one.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. But yeah, I don't know. So yeah, let's move into the score of this film, and I guess there's two ways to describe the score for me. I thought it was like super operatic at times. There's not a lot of it, and it sounded like an A24 score, if that makes any sense.
I don't know if the score stood out that much to me. Like, I can't remember points where I was like, oh, this is too much.
Yeah.
I can't really remember that much of it. And I just watched this thing like less than 12 hours ago. Last night.
Okay.
But what I do remember is the sound effects, in particular his heart murmur.
Oh, okay.
And how frequently it comes in and out of the movie.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like in the beginning, she's listening to his heart murmur.
Right.
And he wants to listen to it, and you get the sound of it.
Yeah.
And then basically, like every other time in the movie when David had a bit of a emotional uptick or like a pace uptick, his heart murmur would come into the sound of the movie, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right.
And that's kind of like a whole nother issue of the movie that we didn't even talk about.
Okay.
With his health, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like a main driver of the movie. It's just present as one more of the struggles within their entire family struggle.
Yeah, it's definitely like a strain.
Yeah.
You get the sense of that.
But I don't know. Do you remember a lot of the score? How long ago did you watch this?
About like a day ago.
Oh, okay.
And so what I noticed was that there'd be massive gaps of time where you had no score. And then it would come in and just flood. Like it would be massively in your face present. And there's a film called The Witch. That's another A24 film. I could totally see why you thought A24 was like a horror house. So yeah, The Witch, which is probably my favorite A24 film. That is a gorgeous film. There'd be times where you'd have complete silence and then just this massive swell of music in a scene, and then it would go away. And I thought that you got that at a bunch of different moments in this film. And so that's why I guess to me it was like quote unquote A24 type score. Like,
okay,
it has a lot of those characteristics where it would just be gone and then be in your face in different moments. I thought
maybe I didn't notice because I was pretty drunk watching this movie last night, and maybe I'm just not as perceptive when I'm drunk.
Maybe it's a possibility. But yeah, I thought the score was fine. I thought it really matched what was going on screen for sure. But yeah, so let's start to wrap things up a bit here and talk about some of our love hates. Even though most of the show is kind of a breakdown of our love hates, but let's kind of wrap it up. So let's start with you.
So what I loved about the movie is highlighting the big lie of the American dream. You know, that's like a big theme, and that's kind of how I've directed my whole life away from. It's like whatever the American dream tells you to do the opposite in life, and you will have a much better time of it. So, like, I really appreciate how they highlighted that, and particularly the whole immigrant side of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good, realistic look at that story that has been told a whole bunch of times in a bunch of different ways. But in that same note, what I disliked about the movie was how hard of a freaking slog it was to get through. You know, like, I had a little bit harder of a time because I was expecting some wacky A24 stuff to happen. So that kind of maybe colored my opinion of the movie a lot more, but it was a tough to get through. I stopped a number of times to just see how much was left, And I know
Yeah.
whenever I do that, I'm not enjoying the film very much.
Oh man. So it's not just you. I don't think it's just you, because I felt very, very similar. Although if I was expecting something, if I was expecting a horror film and I sat through that whole movie, I would be pretty upset. Just
I mean,
saying.
I wasn't upset. I was just like, fuck, when's this going to be over? I want to go to bed.
Yeah. So I commend you for sticking through it. Great job. But yeah, like you, I think it was it's not the most entertaining film for me personally. So in that sense, it was also a slog for me. But I do really appreciate this story, and I appreciate the way it was executed, and I appreciated the way it was presented as a visual medium. I thought it was really beautiful, really well produced and well acted. And I think there's a lot of truth to this movie, like a lot of truth in the performances and the story of this immigrant family. I think the fact that it's, you can tell that it's autobiographical, because a lot of this seems really real world and seems like it was a very personal story for Lee Isaac Chung to tell. And so my hat's off to him for deciding to want to tell that. But yeah, I thought it was well executed, and overall, I think it deserves a lot of the praise it's receiving. But yeah, in terms of like my enjoyment of the film, it wasn't the most entertaining for me per se. So yeah, let's slap our scores on this thing. I guess I'll start.
Okay.
with the score. So I like the story, so it's going to get a point for story. The characters and acting, I think that's where this movie is, so that gets a full point for me. Cinematography, it's beautiful. It gets a point there for me. And the score I thought was effective, for sure. I didn't so much enjoy the story in terms of pure entertainment, so I'm going to knock it down a bit right there. So half a point because it wasn't the easiest film to get through. And then I'm going to have to knock it down another point because I just don't see myself going back to watch this film.
Okay.
So it's going to get 4 buckets of popcorn out of me out of 5.
Okay. All right. So the story, I'm going to give a half to.
Okay.
Because I did kind of like it and the messaging that they're trying to get across with the story.
Yeah.
But it wasn't very entertaining. So I'm going to give it a half.
Okay.
I'll give it a full on the characters and the acting and all that. Full on the cinematography for sure. I'm going to give a half on the score because I don't really remember much, but what I do remember about the soundtrack stuff, I really liked.
Okay.
So what's that? 1, 2, half. So I'm at 3.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give it a half for the feels.
Okay.
Because I can appreciate it and I can appreciate the story, but I didn't enjoy it very much. So I'm going to come in at 3.5 bong loads.
Gotcha. All right. So 4 and a 3.5. And again, we've come off a little bit of a run there where we were handing out 5s. So this is an interesting question to ask. Would you recommend this film?
Not for $20.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Maybe once it's on one of the streaming services, yeah, you can give it a watch, but not for $20.
Gotcha. Okay. What I will say is if you're a general moviegoer, if you go to the movies, if you watch movies for entertainment,
Then
this
no,
probably
for
isn't
sure.
the film for you.
If you're a appreciator of the artistry and all that.
Right. If you want to see how to direct a film, and if you're into the nuts and bolts of that stuff and watching art and beautiful art, I'd say this film is right up your alley for sure.
It's a good film students movie, right?
For sure. I think there's a lot of great technique in this movie that you could teach to people. So yeah, like the director really knew what he was doing for sure. So yeah, that's all I got, man. You got anything else? Any closing comments?
I want The Green Knight to come out, A24.
We are going to do that movie whenever
You
it's
teased
released.
us with it right before the pandemic, and then
Yeah.
it's just been whisked off into nothingness. When's it coming, damn it?
I don't even know what that movie's about.
It's Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Is it?
Yeah, the old, what is it, like an Anglo-Saxon story or English story or something?
Oh, shit.
I don't
okay.
know.
All right.
I remember reading it in high school, and I remember watching some awful 80s movie of it.
Yeah, I never read that story. Okay, cool. Now I'm even more interested. So
It's
yeah,
one of King Arthur's spin-offs.
it's a legend story like that. Spin
Yeah.
off of that whole thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, let's we'll get more A24 films under our belt so you can see that they do a little bit more than the horror. But they do the horror really well. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I love the horror.
Yeah.
And we got to get away. We've been on this stint of Oscar movies that are all kind of downers. So, like, let's do something fun next week. I think we got King Kong vs. Godzilla
Yeah.
coming out. I've had about enough of these heavy fucking award-winning movies.
All right, yeah. So we'll be doing a Kong versus Godzilla next week. And that's supposed to be releasing Friday on HBO Max, so we'll do that
Wednesday, I think.
Wednesday? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, we'll get that one out and take a little bit of a change of direction.
A breath
Yeah, for
and
sure.
a chuckle. Enough of this heavy shit making you feel sad.
Yeah, well, let's take the weight off and we'll be back next week. But yeah, so that's what we got. That was episode 64 of The Buff and the Blazer, and we broke down a bit of Minari by Lee Isaac Chung, and we will catch you guys next week. Hope everyone has a great week, and stay safe out there, people.
See ya.